Amazon delivery service partners are hiring full-time delivery drivers to meet growing customer demand. Receive compensation of at least $20 per hour at select stations, plus benefits, and a sign-on bonus of $1,000 from participating DSPs if you apply now. No delivery experience required. Must be 21 years or older. Terms apply. Apply today at amazon.com/driver. That's amazon.com/driver.
You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Vellante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
It's Ken Vellante with the Something Rather Than Nothing podcast and reaching Sara Hardin from New Orleans. Before I start babbling and getting into the show, Sara, welcome on to the podcast.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have you on. And Sara is a painter, quite amazing painting. We also do some prints that I've seen on Instagram. Also an educator. And looking at your background and where you spent your time, you dedicate yourself a lot to art. So could you tell the listeners a bit about your development as an artist, or did you see yourself as an artist when you were really young?
Yeah, absolutely. So I honestly grew up around artwork. My stepdad is a tattoo artist. My mom is a piercer. I grew up in a tattoo parlor tracing flash of, sparrows and, the heart with the mom in it. And whenever, we were acting up at the shop, we would be forced to do lettering, figure out the fancy script lettering. And that was a punishment, which I find to be absolutely hilarious. Then, growing up in New Orleans, I went to a Catholic high school just because this was all right around Katrina time. And schools were not great. So I was fortunate enough to go to a private high school, but it was Catholic. And I was this little emo girl, that was had dark black hair and gauges and wanted to be all badass. And they were not having it. So, naturally I went for visual arts and things of that nature because I just had that understanding of how to draw and things like that. And it kind of gave me time to really think about what art is to me in high school, and I was like, this is just a fun thing. It'll be fine, whatever. But leaving high school, going into college, I realized I wanted something a little bit more sustainable for, income and things of that nature. Growing up without health insurance is not a fun thing to do. So realizing that I want that stability. And I remember I was like, I'll just go. I'll try and be an art teacher. We'll see if it works. I don't know. It's fine. And I get to ULL, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and I meet a slew of amazing art professors. And I mean random small city in South Louisiana, 2 hours away from anything cool,
It can happen like that, right?
Yeah. There was Brian Kelly. He's an amazing print maker. Dr. Patty Chambers. Well, actually, she's now Spadford now. Who was the art education director at the time. Alan Jones, just amazing professors from all over the United States. And, it kind of took me from there. I kind of jumped in and said, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I love this. Then I got my first teaching position in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, which was a challenging position. It was an all-boys boarding school, and I was 22,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was high school, and they were dating people that were older than me, and it was weird.
Sure. Sure.
But at the end of that year, I knew who I was as an artist because I had art was the way I made my like sanity through all of this. I moved back to Lafayette the following year, taught at another school for a little bit, and then finally moved back home in the middle of the pandemic.
Sure.
um,
Sure.
yeah, yeah. So it was chaos, but it was fun chaos. And I recently got my MFA from the University of New Orleans, uh, and we're just riding this ride now,
Yeah.
kind of figuring out what painting is to me, and still learning from an amazing group of professors from UNO, and still in contact with those people, and they taught me a lot. So yeah,
Yeah. About your painting too, and it's always
absolutely.
like an approach of how to talk about painting. But one of the pieces, the puzzles I was trying to figure out and taking a look at it is, and I'm just generally speaking here. One of the things I love about the painting and the art that I've seen around New Orleans, the color, the flourishing color, and the combinations. It's so vibrant. You see it a lot around there, and I think of things like floral
Hmm.
colors, and how the houses look and paint and things like that. But also within your paintings, I see the structure of it with the shapes that you're building in within almost like this overflowing of color. And I just really fascinated by it because in my mind, thinking about the constraints of geometric shapes and how
Hmm.
that's plotted out, very controlled. And then the combination of color, which feels like, oh, I know this and I see this. Um, in the composition of those elements with, structure and non-structure, am I seeing something that you're trying there, or am I leading into a
Yes.
dynamic that's there?
Yes, no, you are picking up all of it. Like,
Okay.
there's a certain hum to New Orleans, a certain type of energy that just explodes, right? Different seasons, different times of the year. Right now, everything is growing as if it has never seen sunlight before, because it's like, it's hot,
Yay.
thank God, and like part of my art practice is that I take these walks, I go around the city, I take a lot of photos at interesting times. I then like layer them, I
Yeah.
will kind of build out a composition in Photoshop using these photos. Um, and then I kind of just let paint be paint. I know that that's a crazy concept after like taking time to get these photos and, put them into Photoshop and slice them up and collage them together. What I usually do is I will like throw on whatever color, whatever mood, whatever sensation I'm trying to get out of those collages. I'll draw it onto the canvas, and then I close that laptop and I shove it away, and I kind of allow paint just to happen. Colors that feel intuitive, just allow it to exist in this space. Now, of course, every now and then I go, ooh, I don't actually know what that building looks like. I do need to look it up. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
I try and let paint do what paint likes to do, allow the colors to flourish, allow the paint to be added on and then scraped off and then watered down with turpentine, and then, uh, kind of experiment with mark making and with brush strokes and all of that cool stuff. All of that is really the meat of my painting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for chatting about that. Like, I enjoy that and thinking about that, and it's not spend too much time like thinking about it, but thinking about those components of your painting. And yeah, I'm glad I've been to New Orleans a couple times, and there's pieces that I like about it, and immersed within the experiences.
Yeah.
It's a very literary feeling, or inspirational towards literary sounding, and there's a romantic ideal behind that for me. Like, I'm a huge Faulkner fan,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, that kind of like history there, but it feels
Yeah.
like it's there. And I adore the Cajun music, and I've been to Tipitina's, the famous,
Yeah. Gotta love
and
Tipitinas.
yeah, yeah, and it, just one of those types of music I listen. But for me, it was really immersive, not knowing the culture as much, but being really into the arts. And even as a vegan, for the food down that way, I ate
Oh yeah, you will eat good.
excessive. Yeah, like I didn't know before that, but I was like, hey man, like if you're going to New Orleans, no matter what your intake, you might be having different things, but you're gonna be well taken care of. Um,
Correct. And
um,
I think all of that plays into the culture that's here. And I think all of that kind of touches in my work, even if it's not necessarily the number one goal of my painting is to give a hum of New Orleans. Like, that's not really it for me. For me, it's more about my own memories and my own experiences, just because I'm closer to those. But all of that background, all of that culture, all of those things that happen are part of my experience here that we're kind of putting into paint, translating into paint.
yeah.
You know?
What about teaching? What about trying to part of the show? One of the things asking about people's experience with art and development. I think if you talk to any human, you sit down and talk, you can hear a story, or you can come in contact with like their experience of art, whether they played music, whether they were a
Mhm.
painter, whether the parents were, and it's always like a mixed kind of story, or it's a great story, it's a sad story, but it's always part of like how somebody develops to be like an artist in their experience. And a lot of that has to do with being taught, not being taught, being encouraged like that. So you're in a unique role, practicing artist, but also trying to uh, teach human beings how to be an artist and how to come in
Yeah.
contact with art. What's that experience like doing both? Because not everybody tries to do both, or is maybe active in doing both.
Yeah, I personally love it. I'm not going to say that it's not a lot of work because it is a lot. But I don't know. My students are awesome. Like I love my little teeny boppers. Like they're all so angsty and they're all so angry at the world, and it's cool because that's cool to be angry at the world. And they walk into their art one class and they see me in a striped shirt and crazy color pants, and they're like, she's weird, and I'm like, yeah, I am. You're gonna love me by the end of the year.
Yeah.
You know and these kids that I'm working with, this is like a Title I schools. It's
Yep.
majority minorities, and some of these kids have never been told that they're good at things. They walk in first day, they draw a picture of themselves, and I'm like, guys, this is pretty good. I love
Yeah.
this. And they're like, oh, this is trash. I hate it. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then throughout the year, they're able to see their own growth, which is something that is magic, in my opinion. Like you talked about how painting is magic. I think teenagers learning things that they did not know before is magic. And it helps me as an artist personally because I get to work with everyone from my Art 1 freshmen to my seniors that are, making a portfolio to go to Pratt. Like, I get the whole shebang. So I get these really in-depth conceptual ideas from these kids that I'm like, wow, that's really good. That's a good thing to like chew on. And then I also get to review how to draw a nose and eyes and mouth every year for the last 7 years, with my Art 1 kids. And I get this whole experience of seeing kids grow and knowing how they think. And it influences my own work because I look at a problem that they have and I go, ooh, this is how we can solve that problem. And they go, that's a cool idea. And I'm like, all right, try it. Throw scissors at it, cut up the painting if you don't like the painting, it's fine,
Yeah.
and having that more cavalier way of thinking, because it's a high schooler. They're going to make a buttload of stuff in their life. If they're starting now, they're going to make stuff. It's just how it is. People are drawn to making things.
Yeah.
You give them the tools to do it and they do it. But having like my problem solving brain on constantly gives me, in my own, work, I get to say, you know what? I don't really like this part of my painting. And it frees me up to paint over that entire part. Allow it to fade into the background, because it's not as precious as some artists make it out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to experiment, particularly in teaching. You have to hopefully experiment with play. I wanted to ask you one of the big questions, conceptual, is what is art? So you're doing all this stuff, you're teaching it. What is it? What's art?
I think art is honestly everything. But to put it down into less vague terms, I think art is the experience of creating something out of nothing, I am able to put this white canvas on these stretcher bars and throw paint at it, and it becomes something of value. Um, Musicians are able to pick up a guitar, play a couple of notes, and create a song. I think art is supposed to make us feel things. I think it's supposed to make us think harder than normal, I think it's something that kind of stems from our unconscious mind, and we need something to put it out there. Some type of form, some type of thing. I don't really have much else of an answer. But
No, I think it's a lot.
Like,
it's a lot in there, and yeah, I mean, all of those things, and I think there's like the emotion and the learning and the communication. A lot of time I ask the question, and a lot of times people are trying to talk about how we communicate with each other, right? Like, if I have a complicated like social situation, sometimes I'll see something that might be like an image of it and be like, yeah, that's the messed up thing like in my head that I was trying to figure out, and it's right there. And yeah, that seems to be inherently fun or productive. So, and I think it was within your answer too, as far as like the role of art. But asking it a little bit further in connection to your comments, is the role of art change? I mean, I was reading in your work and just talking about climate change and where you are in New Orleans. I mean, it's a lived experience. It isn't an abstract. Just like what the role of art now. I mean, has it changed? What you put up a painting. An extreme example is like you're putting up a painting in a burning world. What's going on here? Has the role of art changed in your opinion?
I think it both has and hasn't. I feel like it's always been this thing to make us question our society and make us like think deeper about X, Y, or Z. I just think now we kind of like set it ablaze almost. We're kind of in hyperdrive because we're racing against this giant clock that is climate change, and as like an artist in New Orleans, where we're losing 50 feet of land every year from our coast, and hurricanes are getting worse, and we live in these chaotic times where we can't really trust our insurance companies to pay out, even though we've been paying for 20 years, I don't know, art right now is important just to be aware of what's going on in other people's lives. It really is a tool for communication. Because of this art, we're having this conversation now. Because of this art, someone listening in another part of this country might not realize that Louisiana is in such a serious climate crisis, Right.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do something about it. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But it's getting a message out there to say, hey, look, this is what's happening in my head. What does this reflect anything that's happening in your head? Do you feel some type of connection with this? And I mean, social justice art is huge right now. It's a necessary thing.
Yeah, I mean,
You
it
know?
seems that when you communicate, there's a drive to communicate with more purpose, and
Yeah.
that's a reality. And um, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think about it in this way. And when I was talking about New Orleans
Hmm.
and the colors, and again, not trying to be stereotypical, the colors, the flourishing
Yeah.
colors, the vibrancy that's there. You're gonna see it. You're gonna see it in the paintings. Um, I know you've looked at and researched and thought about plants. And when I think about plants and the changes that are going on here, I immediately think of those delicate colors. I immediately think
Yeah.
of the delicacy of those plants
Yeah.
and you think of major things like heat, and we know things are going on. How is, in you doing your art and with those colors, what's been your approach to that? How has that impacted you taking a look at what's going on, say, with the ecosystem that is in the environment of which you inhabit?
Well, right now I have been highly inspired to like capture these moments of like intense growth because New Orleans it's colorful, it's vibrant, but it's also super funny. If you ever like walk around a New Orleans like neighborhood, there are just these quirky, weird things
Yeah,
that like our neighbors do. Down the street from me, there's this guy that took a telephone wire, wrapped it in old tires to make a punching bag. And he goes and he works out on his punching bag every morning. You will see him, and within that punching bag, there's these beautiful little white flowers that are like slowly creeping up because he's making this new ecosystem of like rubber and wood and flowers, and like it's the funniest thing. And
yeah, yeah,
we like we're just kind of a hot mess down here, but like it's a great hot mess. We have everything is overgrown, everything looks like it's dilapidated a little bit, and it's gorgeous. It's
yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. So right now I'm actually working on a little series on handmade paper where I'm going out and I'm making these paintings of overgrown areas in New Orleans, and I'm doing the same idea of collaging these things together. Um, and I'm kind of using these plants, like these delicate concepts, or these delicate images as a metaphor for growth, right? And building and growing from like the crack in the sidewalk or growing around the fence. Like there's this growth that there's this growth here that like cannot be contained. Even if we try, it will not be contained. It wins. Nature
Yeah.
wins every time. And I think that's kind of a metaphor for what people can be going through in life. You might want to put up a fence and kind of stop here, but you're going to be pushed forward to grow into the next stage of your life, or be pushed to think in a new way, or things of that nature, just because that's the way life is, you know?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That it's that idea of the idea of flourishing.
Yes.
And there's something energetically about being around those environments. And I would say, like, even like as a way to live, like I lived out in Wisconsin. I'm from Rhode Island originally. I'm
Hmm.
out in Oregon now, and I'm very sensitive to the seasonal adaptations. But living in the Willamette Valley, which I do, which is basically the Fertile Crescent, as far as I can understand it. I mean,
Hmm.
everything grows here. It doesn't get too cold. The moisture remains trapped. You get the sun. It's like
Yeah.
grow,
You're,
grow, 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 grow,
yeah.
grow.
You're
And
essentially creating your little greenhouse, right?
well, and so for me, like, I become attached to those energies. Like, I grew up outside of Providence, Rhode Island, and so when I'm around a place like this, which it'll always be a fantasy land to me, right?
Hmm.
ocean 1 hour away, gorgeous mountains. You got lakes, forest. I mean, it's unimaginable. But one of the things is that when with the threat of wildfires that have been out here, has been like we're like I just think in the ways you celebrating the flourishing and everything that's there, and then just like kind of the danger that is around. It was one of the most terrifying couple years back, 2 or 3 years back,
Yeah.
when the wildfires almost came into the valley here
Hmm.
and approached cities, where I was just like, "Oh my gosh," and it came
Yeah.
down to which way the wind was gonna blow, just like down where you are,
Yes.
if it's gonna hit over here, or it's gonna go a
Yeah.
little bit west, and
It,
it's,
yeah. It's absolutely, it's chaos. It really is. And I really didn't look at my paintings from a ecological standpoint until after Hurricane Ida hit. Me and my like little block of neighbors were all good friends, and we all hang out, and it's great to be across the street from your best friends. But
yeah,
we all decided, okay, you know what, we're young, we're 20 somethings, we can like hang, we'll make sure that the block is cool. So we stayed, and it was a really scary hurricane that we were out of power. We were lucky because we were connected to a hospital grid. So we were without power for like 5-6 days, which was fine. But going through the hurricane, one of our neighbors, the roof caved in on them,
yeah.
just because a couple shingles came loose. So yeah, it's a wild ride down here. It really is. So I can't, and that is with a warning. We get hurricanes,
Yeah.
that we're like, hey guys, you might have to evacuate. Like, and we're like, no, we're not gonna evacuate. We're tough. We're from here. This is what we do. We take a weird pride about staying, which is crazy and doesn't make any sense, but it's part of the culture. You're like, no, we're just gonna stay. It'll be okay.
Well,
It'll
it's the
be
same
okay.
dynamic that's played out everywhere. When you're on the outside, you say go, you get going.
Yeah.
Ignorantly, honestly, get going. And when you're an inside, you're either going to stay there, or number two, you literally can't get out. Like,
Yes.
so it's like, even with warnings. So, you're
Yes.
talking about millions of people. So it's like cut both ways, and everybody on the outside just do this. And,
Yeah.
I could see myself as the one trying to get out, or I could see myself as being the person and being like, you can't move my ass out of my house as
Yeah.
well. I don't know for sure. I might be either one.
Yeah. And you don't know until you're in that moment. You go, obviously, we're going to do this. And you're like, guys, that's like 100-mile-per-hour winds, like coming at you. And you're like, no, it's fine. We're okay. But like, after that whole crazy experience in the middle of grad school, I remember like sitting with one of my professors, Aria Martin, fabulous photographer. And she was like, oof, I see your work in a different light. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, my house is gone, and it kind of looks like this, like looking
Oh,
at
yeah.
these like collaged, kind of overlapping stuff in boxes, stuff everywhere
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
look. And it kind of is. It's a little like aftermath of a hurricane. It's disjointed. It doesn't work really when you think about it in a more three-dimensional view.
Sure.
But you still have to continue on as normal because not everywhere got destroyed. The city has to open back up. So you might be living out of a room with, no AC, no power still, and you might still have to go to work because we're trying to get everything back together.
Everybody's got to get back and going. It's, well, thank you for telling. I mean, I think it's, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it, and through the painting too, like
Yeah.
going back to the idea of like what was in there. And everybody make sure you check out Sara Hardin's painting, and we'll get into a bit more later on where you can tell folks where to find all your stuff. But I wanted to ask big question of the show. Why is there something rather than nothing?
Oh, I love this question. All right. So why is there something rather than nothing? I think because nothing's not really an option for humans. I think that we're beings that think about thinking. From like the very early prehistoric times, we were painting on caves to try and communicate. And I think like what we're learning more about psychology now is that building relationships and communicating with people is how we become happier, more evolved humans. And I think art, in my case, painting, is the way that I do that. You know, I love talking to people about my work. I love, communicating these ideas with people. And for me, there's something rather than nothing because I don't know how to do nothing.
Yeah.
It's not really an option. It's in order to continue living life in some type of joy, there has to be something there,
Yeah.
And visual arts, painting, printmaking, that is my something. And I don't think that that's, everybody's something, but everybody has a something.
Yeah. I think so. And yeah, I appreciate your thoughts around that. I've always thought about it in the context of the show. It's I think philosophy and philosophers, my read on the
Mm-hmm.
discipline is always been disruptive and provocative in a good way.
Absolutely.
To the question creating other questions, and I find that artists who think so much about what they do, or maybe haven't had the opportunity for a while because you might get caught up in industry stuff, or you might be like,
Sure.
I think when people do stuff for a while, like I work in
Yeah.
the labor movement, I represent K to 12 educators
Oh, you rock.
support professional. Oh, thank you.
Love you
Uh,
the most.
teachers, janitors, custodians, food service workers, instructional assistants, special education assistants, and you know, it's just that within all of this, we're just like trying to strive and to become better and to move ahead. And you know, about one of the things I wanted to say about your teaching, and because I've talked to teachers a lot, but one of the things I wanted to say is I want to tell you something. Like, I've talked on the show a little bit about art activities that I've been done or prompted to do,
Mm-hmm.
to put it in context, over the last 3 or 4 years through my contact with the art world, through me creating a podcast. I paint and I do other forms of art, but just in all these experiences, just learning how to do some basic things. I didn't never took art classes in college, and I didn't really have what I hear to be an art training or education K to 12 like others. I haven't
Yeah.
had that, just from how it's been described to me. So some of the basic things that you do, some of the foundational things you do to be an artist, I know I've encountered two or three of them in the last year or two. And
Yeah.
me encountering them in the last year or two being taught to me, it doesn't matter if they're simple or profound or basic or fundamental or whatever, it changed my ability to create art. And
Yeah.
so one of the things I say to you is like, and I know as a practitioner, like working in labor, is that sometimes you're doing stuff and you just don't know like what it is. But I'll say for you, like in those type of discrete things that you do and that the students have the contact with, they'll have that now. They'll have that now just by being in contact with you. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a profound thing. And I think that's something we kind of waltz past. And I won't do it because I represent you and other teachers and other educators throughout the country, but I won't do it because that's what you do.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I have a lot of street cred, my kids, and they'll be probably listening to this and then cringing because I said the word street cred. But um, I have street cred with my kids because every time they had an assignment that they had to do, I was like, hey guys, look, you have to make this, I have to make this. We're going to make stuff together. And they saw me creating. They saw me working. They saw me saying, this doesn't work. I'm going to try this instead. Or,
Yeah.
hey, do y'all see these 4 paintings? These are trash. That's okay. We're going to keep making more, And I think that like co-making with my students is something that they get to understand how I'm thinking while I'm creating, which is one of those opportunities that I don't know that a lot of other artists do with kids, because they don't think that they'll understand it, or they don't think that they'll really get it, or that they really care. But, you think they're not listening, and then all of a sudden they quote you back to you in the middle of you being really frustrated, and you're like, son of a bitch. Y'all right. Like, you're correct. I was like, guys, I can't figure this out. I don't know what to do. And they're like, cut it up. And I'm like, well, okay, that works for y'all. That works for you, but I can't do that. And they're like, why not? And I'm like, well, you're not wrong. Why can't I do that? Why is that in my rule book, but not in your rule book? And, I think it's important for them to see an artist being an artist, living their life, and also, not struggling, not being in a difficult spot, just making artwork because you want to make artwork.
As a life.
Yeah, live a living artist making things and calling it a day, And it's a cool spot that I'm at right now,
Yeah. I gotta tell you, like I said, I haven't visited New Orleans. I gotta admit, I am a bit wistful, although it is gorgeous in the Willamette Valley here in Oregon.
Don't come to New Orleans right now.
Is it hot and steamy? See,
it's bad. It's horrible.
Everybody drives. No, I mean the humidity. Everybody complains about. I lived in Washington D.C. and learned about humidity, and that probably doesn't even quite compare, but it's probably similar. So we're speaking with Sara Hardin, and Sara, tell everybody, tell the listeners how to find your stuff, what you're up to. Online, or we're recording here in early June. If there's something for folks to know about where to come in contact with your work physically, any of that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I am showing with Where Ya Art. That is an online platform for New Orleans artists. If you're interested in purchasing anything, that is all there. I'm really happy to ship. My Instagram handle is Sara, SARA _Hardin, HARDIN _creative. You can see all kinds of stuff if y'all are interested in commissions, especially if you're in the New Orleans area and you're vibing with what I got going on. Let me know. Just DM me. That's cool. My website is Hardin Creative, HARDIN creative.com. And I have a solo show coming up in Natchitoches, Louisiana at the LSMA gallery. And that will be in November. And then from there, you can catch me on Julia Street, which is a big street in New Orleans full of galleries. So I should be in there in a couple of months.
Wonderful. I always get excited hearing about what's coming out, and spots that you'll be, because the show's worldwide. There'll be some folks in New Orleans, and be able to get your art. And of course, thanks for I was looking at your work, and great to let folks know that you can get pieces to them as well. I got to tell you, Sara, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you and to come in contact with your work. I think when I engage with painters, or I see the painting that you do without having known you or met you before, that there's something, there's always something inexpressible there that I am brought towards, And I really enjoy being able to talk to you about those and for you to share, what is, teaching and all the different things you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And of course, my recent interest in plants has come from the Rooted podcast, which I've had M. Greb Nagatis who makes that show. So it's fun to talk about flowers and the swamps and plants, because why not?
Exactly. Why not? Something rather than nothing, right?
It's an open net. So, thanks so much for coming on, Sarah. I really love your artwork, and hope we get the chance to chat some more and share some more of your stuff.
Absolutely. Love to do it.
This is Something Rather Than Nothing,